All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's webinar is hosted by our Director of STEM Education, Mr. Greg Roark. Greg, if you want to go ahead and join us. Today, we are going to be talking about blended learning methods for your STEM classes, and I'm going to hand it on over to Greg.
All right, Joey, thanks. Appreciate it. Guys, we're going to be doing some new stuff here today too. So here's what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask for a little latitude here in things because we have some different things that we're going to be showing you here. And since this is my first time using this in this format, then again, I'm going to ask for a little forgiveness here up front. So this webinar that we're doing here today, it's a little bit different than the one that we actually had planned for it. And the reason that I kind of switched it up a little bit was based on the feedback that we got from last week, because we had some really good questions and some questions after the webinar that came in, because I think more and more now educators across the country are starting to sort of see how this education rollout is going to go for everybody here this fall. And it seems as though that most people are going to be in some form of a blended or hybrid type of teaching scenario. So we're going to be talking about that and touching on a couple of the things that I highlighted last week and give some specific examples about those things that you may be able to do through your courses with your students, as we kind of move along here. So with that, it's going to be the kind of thing that we do here in our STEM Plus program, and part of the things that we endorse. And so with that, what we're going to discuss today is that we're going to be looking at some of the hands-on elements that we do here in that blended portion when we're physically present in a classroom, and when perhaps we do have kids that are physically present, but we also know that at some point that we're going to be doing this virtually. And so with that, of course, then that's going to be kind of that hands-off or the no-touch element of things that we're doing. And then we'll actually take a little virtual field trip here today. Huh? How about that? I know, we're excited. And then we'll kind of wrap that up. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started here today. It should be about 45 minutes that we go here as well. And as we go through, and as always, guys, if you have questions about anything like that, please don't hesitate to ask, whether it's on the actual webinar here today, or if you want to send an email with questions or something that may require something a bit, outside the boundaries of what we're doing here. So with that, here's what I would ask everyone to do, is to go ahead and let's grab those blenders. I know. So with that, guys, let's go ahead and let's look here at kind of the hands-on portion here of what we're going to be doing here in our classrooms. And the first thing that I want to touch on here is looking at organizing your materials here for that personal visual presentation. So when you have those kids in class, knowing that you may have something that you want to teach, but then also know that at some point they're not going to be in that classroom with you. So we're going to be looking at that, and then we'll also be looking at how we use the simulators to kind of light that fuse here with that integrated component of some of the aeronautics education that we do. So as we look at organizing those materials, I want to give you an example, and I'm going to give you a couple here. In fact, excuse me, I'm sorry. And so the first example that I want to give you here is a plotter. So those of you that are teaching aeronautics courses, etc., everybody is used to the plotters that we have. It can be one of the static plotters, or it can be like one of the super plotters here that I have here. It doesn't really matter. But it's one of those things that you think about and you think, okay, with some of this stuff, I might have wanted to do like table exercises with the students. Okay, well, if I have them all in that class, that's great. But what do I do when I don't? So the first thing, of course, that we need to do is we need to say, this would probably be a pretty good time to actually teach the students how to actually use the plotter in the way that I know I'm going to be asking them to do when I'm doing this hands-off, when I'm doing this virtually. So this is like one of those examples that you might consider switching up the way that you would normally teach a section on here. And this may be in cross-country flight. This could be in, you know, however you're using this for your plotters. But this may be an example about where you do some of your groundwork stuff up front versus being able to kind of do it as you go, because again, you may want to get to a place here where in a classroom you might be able to do something a little bit different than what you're going to be able to do here now. So my recommendation would be is that on things like this, with this plotter, go through the basics of the actual plotter use, so then you can save those other examples about how to use them. So that's like one idea here for like a plotter. Another thing has to do with, again, the imagery, and we touched on that last week. So for instance, if we look at something here and we look at, let's say, an approach plate. Here's an ILS approach plate here, PHOG runway 2. This is in Maui with that. As you can see, and as you might be able to use in your classroom, there's a tremendous amount of detail here that this chart encompasses, this approach plate. So one of the things that I started doing is I started breaking down and doing my own copies, and I did this both with imagery of where I took pictures of the approach plate and then edited it into the sections that I wanted, and then I also used screenshots. And I would use those screenshots to break down the certain elements of it. So for instance, like the heading component of this, what I would do is show the entirety of the plate itself, but then I would break this down where I would just show the heading pieces of this. Then I would take even my plan view here of something like this, and I would even cut this in half. And the reason that I would do that is because you have to think about, from an imagery standpoint, that least common denominator. And that's going to be this, because again, remember, a lot of your students are going to be tuning in on their phones. So you've got to be able to say, okay, how is this going to play on a really small screen? So that's why you take some of these images here that you think are going to be best, and then I would send them to your phone. Pull them up on your phone, make sure that you can see them on your phone. Another little trick here too, and this is something that I meant to mention last week, is that when you're using your computer to show imagery there on your computer to your students, your cursor, if you go to your settings and you can do a search for cursor, or you can go to mouse and pointer, whatever it's going to say, and you want to blow that bad boy up as big as you can get it. And the reason that you want to create the largest cursor, that largest pointer that you're able to do, because again, if you think about students checking in here on their phones, being able to see that itty bitty pointer sliding across that screen may be a tall order. So with that, I would suggest blowing that pointer up as best you can. So imagery like this. Then also think about that electronic schematic when you get into systems component of that. And you look, for instance, in the FAA handbook, and you look at that and you see it's a 2-page illustration. Well, that's going to be one of those things where either electronically or photographically, you want to break that down so that students can see what everything is when they're looking on their phones. In addition to that, we mentioned the handouts last week as well. So with those handouts, this may be another area where it may not have been in your handout list from before, but now maybe it should be. So that's a couple of the things here that you can look at when you look at the type of things that you do. And I'll go back to last week here for just a minute here also. And to say this, one of the challenges here is that you think, okay, I've taught this class for 20 years. I'm good. It would behoove you to go through start to finish and look at all of the imagery that you're going to be using with this course. And then again, as you're looking at that imagery, hold this up right next to it. How's that going to play? So that would be what I would suggest. So With that, we also, when we look at this, and we do have the students that we have actually in the classroom, and we are able to physically be present with those students, one of the things that we want to do is like for the simulators, let's say, for example, is that you want to show them the basics of those simulators, and you can show them here on the basics of the sims. And I'm looking here, and I noticed that for some reason my imagery is not coming through here. But what I have below this line is I have a picture here of a J desktop flight simulator. I'm not 100% sure why that's not showing up here on the screen, guys. I do apologize, but it's a picture of the J. So the orientation of your students with whatever systems that you're going to be using in the course of your class. And guys, I'm going to try something here just real quick. Bear with me here for just a moment. There it is. Okay. And so this is just a picture here, just illustrating one of the desktop flight simulators in your classroom. So when you look at that, you're thinking, okay, what is the actual, this tactile elements of these systems here? What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to ingrain this imagery in your students' minds as to where is this yoke? What do I have on top of the yoke? Where's my trim? Where is my push to talk switch? And you think about that yoke. You think about where's my throttle? Where's my mixture? Where's my flap switch? You know, my magnetos, anything that may be on that machine, being able to have your students in your classroom close their eyes and be able to move their hand in that position for this, because this goes into an exercise that I'm going to show you here in just a minute when we think of the hands-off items. And so when we think about that, yeah, I think everybody, well, I don't know, but a lot of times people will have in their classrooms, they will have an image of, let's say, the inside component of a Cessna 172, a Cessna 182, and again, for some reason here, guys, that imagery is just not showing up. I don't know why, but this is it's a larger picture of just the desktop unit itself. And this may be one of those pictures that you want to have available, that you have in a handout form, so that you have students that are able to actually look at this picture and visualize where all of the tactile controls are with this sim, so that when we're doing the visualization exercises here, that they kind of know where everything is. And if they need to, they can look at this imagery just for reference, and they can look and to say, okay, yes, left hand here, I've got right hand here on my throttle, here's my mixture here, here's my flap switch, you know. And so to be able to actually just physically move your hands along those sides. It looks like the image that I had here just decided to join us. Thank you very much. Welcome to the party. And so those are some of the things there too that you very well may want to include in like either a paper or an electronic handout package that you might have for your students. Because again, if you don't have them in that classroom, sometimes it may be difficult to be able to draw that corollary between hand position here if they don't have an idea about, you know, where that particular control surface might be. So show them the basics, but also the big thing that you want to drill into them when you know that you're going to have some form of a blended learning, you know, environment that you're having to deal with, is just so that they can mentally see where all of these controls are on this system, because you may be putting them through exercise on there where they're having to actually manipulate those controls mentally. Okay, so there's that part here again. Now we get to the hands-off piece, and this is that part where now all of a sudden is that you are in a position where now we're teaching from afar. We are no longer actually physically present with the students. So with that, again, we think about those lessons that we talked about last week about how to set everything up to make this as effective as we possibly can, but then to also think about the fact that that learning really needs to continue, and that learning needs to continue even without you there. So we had one of the comments that we had from last week is to say, Greg, what is a particular exercise, an example of an exercise that you have used in the past where you have done some form of this visual flying, some form of like a, most people have heard of like couch flying, where you sit in a particular place, close your eyes, and you kind of visualize these things. Well, with that, there are also some other exercises that you can teach students how to do them, and then you can base lessons off of the architecture that you're going to show them about how to do these visualization exercises. And so with that, this is kind of a new portion here of our presentation here, and this is just a note to me here personally as I see this, because as I'm using this particular format here, one of the things that I have noticed is that anything that I have in this slide deck that has a picture on it slows everything down. So I just noticing that here myself. So with that, I had a very, very clever slide here, and I'm just so sorry for all of you tuning in right now that you're not getting to see, you know, an example of my, there it is. Okay, finally it shows up. Thank you very much. Yes, an old Monty Python fan there. And so now I am going to move this screen and I'm going to show you something else here. And so this is going to be a video that I'd like to show you here of one such visualization exercise. And this is, well, I'll let the video explain. Stand by.
All right, everybody, this is what I was talking about. This is one of the exercises that I used to do with my students at several schools in New Mexico and Colorado, elsewhere. And the reason that we do this is so we can't always be sitting near a sim or sitting in an airplane, which would be great if we could. But in those cases, there are going to be times that we still want to practice certain things like procedure. Well, the art of visualization is one of those things that's a very powerful learning tool. Just the imagery alone is you just kind of ingrained thing. I think of Michael Jordan, in fact, when they were talking about Michael, how do you move so quick? How do you be somewhere before the ball is? And he was explaining that it's because he had played that particular scenario over in his head 1,000 times. So he was able to anticipate certain things. Is that so different from what we teach our kids here with regard to aeronautics? Being able to try to anticipate things? Well, we can practice these procedures. And this is what we call floor flying. And by my way of thinking, if it's good enough for the Thunderbirds, it's good enough for me. So I want to give you just a little example about what we're doing. I'll kind of walk you through the old tape in the floor. And by the way, we're here at Redbird Flight Simulations here at our assembly offices here in Austin. And I want to thank Ryan for clearing some floor space for me. We're pretty crazy busy here, and so for us to find this amount of floor room right now is pretty nuts. So again, I want to thank Ryan for being able to clear stuff out here for me for us to do this. So Ryan, thanks, pal. And then also, I just want to kind of walk you around and just kind of see what we're doing. Here, what we're going to be talking about is going to be airport operations, and in particular, we're going to be talking about the traffic pattern. And from a traffic pattern, we're going to pick a mythical airport here. We're going to pick a mythical runway. We're going to talk about several different things. Understand that what you're going to hear from me are going to be things that I've done at various airports in various states, etc., with a Diamond DA-40. Now, a lot of people fly Cessnas, a lot of people fly Pipers, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. Use your checklist. Use your procedures that you use with your program. That's what you want to use here. But I'm just showing you here ways that you can plug all that stuff in. So let's take a look at what we have here on the floor here in front of you. So the small box that I have right here, that's the tarmac. This is the tie-down area. Now the runway here, represented here by this kind of whitish colored tape. We basically have runway 36, so facing north here, and we have runway 18, facing south. So this part here is the runway, this white tape. Now you'll notice that from that I have red tape, then I have yellow tape, and then here at downwind I have green tape. Now, why would I have that? Here's why. When do most accidents occur? Takeoff and landing, right? That's the red zone. That is that time where we are laser focused. Then, as we're climbing out to the traffic pattern, and again, you're going to hear procedures that I've used. They're not necessarily going to be your procedures. I get it. But with this, we're going to use our climb out here as we fly here our upwind leg. We're going to have that as red because, again, that, danger, danger, danger. We need to be thinking, what do we do in these scenarios? Then we get to a safe altitude, which is represented by the corner, which for our programs is going to be 500 feet AGL. 500 feet AGL, you're going to hear me talk through things as we go through before I turn my crosswind leg. About midway through the crosswind leg, as I'm on my way up to TPA, now I can start to just, I don't want to say relax a little bit, but I can kind of just maybe just put this in a little different area where now I can start dividing my attention elsewhere here as I'm preparing for the rest of the traffic pattern. So that's the yellow zone. That's kind of the caution zone, okay? So you can see that I've got the caution zone running here on the crosswind leg, and then just as we turn, because in some cases, depending upon where you are, what your geographical constraints may be, there may be kind of a little difference where you reach TPA, traffic pattern altitude. It may be 1,000 feet AGL at your airport. It may be 800 feet. It may be 1,200 feet. Everybody is a little bit different, but just standard is kind of 1,000 feet, so that's what we're going to use here at this mythical airport here in Austin. So with that, you see my caution here, then I get lined out, then on my downwind, here's my green. Now this is the area here now where, again, it's a little bit more where I can, again, kind of expand my senses here, start looking at some other things. Again, I don't want to necessarily use the word relax here, but it's not as busy right here on that green section here in downwind. So if you kind of think of it in terms of sort of that intensity area, it's probably a little less intense here on downwind. Not that we're not thinking about everything else that's coming, but that's just why that's green. Then we get to our beam point. So we get a beam, our touchdown point. That's where that yellow tape picks up again here. Again, caution as we begin starting to get our airplane configured here for landing. Again, we start making our turn here from downwind to base. And then there's that about halfway through, that's where we go here into the red again. We get into the red here, plenty of time before we make the turn here at Coffin Corner. Why do we call it Coffin Corner? Because it is the most important turn you'll ever make in aviation, is that turn here from base to final. Then again, as we get around here safely and we get negotiated here on the corner here from base to final, here we are coming down in here for what we're going to prepare for as a go-around. You're going to hear me say some things that may be a little bit different, but I just want to just kind of talk you through what we have. You see that we have little intersections here, and again we have the runway, so that's kind of what we do. So in this case, we're going to go with left traffic here on this. We're going to take off on runway 36. We're going to have left closed traffic here. I might talk to a tower. I might just self-announce. I don't know, haven't gotten there yet. And so then that's what we're going to do. We'll fly up here north as we begin kind of our traffic pattern. So the things that I expect my students to understand here as we're doing this are these elements here from an airport operations standpoint of just what I described. I want them to be able to understand the orientation of the runway, the taxiway, the intersections, where the tie-down area is. We're going to be practicing some communications along the way here too, depending upon whether or not I'm at a controlled or an uncontrolled airfield here as well. So we're going to be talking about some of these things. And again, what I'm doing is just giving you ideas about how to do this. We also use checklists. We had specific checklists that we had with every program that we had, and we had kids using those checklists as they ran, doing what we were doing here in this traffic pattern. So There's standard operations that we do. Then I would throw them some curveballs. And I'll kind of talk you through that here again. So this is for a Diamond DA-40. These are the airplanes that we flew, and it just happened to be in my backpack, so that's what I'm going to use. So we're going to pretend that we're here. I may make radio calls here and practice things for towered, for a controlled field, for an uncontrolled field. So we'll just kind of see how all of this goes. So here we are, the tie-down area here at the tarmac. We've already done our pre-flight. In fact, we've already done our engine run-up. So we're ready to go ahead and we're ready to taxi. Tune in here. Let's say it's a towered airfield. We're going to tune into ground, 121.9er. We'll tune into ground and we'll say something like Austin ground, Diamond Star 123 Romeo Bravo, ready to taxi, runway 36 with information India. So ground comes back, November 123 Romeo Bravo, Austin ground. Taxi runway 36 via Alpha, hold short 36 at Echo. Taxi 36 via Alpha, hold short of Echo, 123 Romeo Bravo. Okay, here we are. We're ready to start taxi. So here we go. We come to the taxi area. Once we start moving right here, we don't stop. We do not stop moving all the time. This is how we're going. In this case now, kids are looking through here. They're looking at the checklist depending upon where they are. We're passing the intersection here. So here we are on the taxiway, going here to runway 36. In this case, we're looking here. Are all of our instruments correct? Everything working properly? Listening for other traffic out in the area. We're also thinking about winds here at this point. They keep saying they're calm. Everything feels calm. So here we are checking, ready to go, maintaining centerline discipline, all of these things that the kids are working on. So here we are at Echo. Now we're ready to go. Now in this case, we can go ahead and stop because we're holding short. So here we are, and so we switch over to tower, Austin Tower, Diamond Star 123 Romeo Bravo, holding short, runway 36 at Echo, ready for takeoff, closed traffic, and closed left traffic, Austin Tower. So then we'll hear something back, Austin Tower will come back, and they will say something to the effect of November 123 Romeo Bravo, clear for takeoff, runway 36, left closed traffic approved, winds calm. And so then your kid's going to repeat that. They're going to repeat, clear for takeoff, runway 36, left closed traffic approved, 123 Romeo Bravo. So now here we go. We're going to go taxi out here onto the runway. We're here on the runway 36, lights, camera, action. Make sure our lights are on here. Make sure that our transponder is squawking properly here, and then we're ready to go. So now here we go. Here we go. Now, again, we're going to be doing the motions. So here we are, full power. So here we are, full power, coming down the runway. Airspeed is alive, engine instruments in the green. We're talking about all of this. Here we are. We're at 59 knots. Ease back on the stick. Oh, look at that. We're flying. Climbing out 67 knots. We climb out at 67 knots in the Diamond. So here we are. We're on climbing out on runway center line. We're looking, checking, making sure that everything is good. Again, keeping our airspeed 67 knots. Everything looks good. And now here we are, 500 feet AGL. 500 feet AGL. Flaps up, fuel pump off, lights off, free to maneuver. Once we get that part we're free to maneuver, now we're ready to turn from our upwind to our crosswind leg. So here we are, instead of 67 knots now, we're climbing at 73 knots. So here we are at 73 knots, going here, perpendicular here to our runway here on our course, here on our crosswind leg. Here we are, everything looks good. Here's traffic pattern altitude. Here we are now, and I'm turning here now parallel here on my the downwind leg. So now, here we are, traffic pattern altitude, 1,000 feet above the deck. And now here we are, we're looking, everything is looking good, checking everything out. Everything looks normal. I'm looking at my spacing over here, making sure that as I look here, the DA-40 is a low-wing airplane, so I'm looking here to make sure that my spacing is correct, that I'm far enough away from the runway, yet close enough to it that if I have a problem, I can still glide to the runway if necessary. Here I am. Now I'm going to do my pre-go around checklist. Pre-go around checklist. Did he just say pre-go around checklist? Well, I thought it was a pre-landing checklist. In our program, our kids are taught a pre-go around checklist. We want them spring-loaded for the go around and get surprised if they get to land. We want that mentality in it. So we call it a pre-go around checklist. So with that, here we go. And some of you may just be able to see my feet. And fortunately for you, my feet are really big. So here we go. Gas is on the fullest, undercarriage is down and welded. Mixture set for field elevation. Prop full forward if we don't have a noise abatement situation. If we do have a noise abatement situation and we want to put that prop full forward on final, we will defer. Power as needed. Switches, landing lights on. Seats, seat belt secured. Left seat secured, right seat secured. Pre-go around checklist is complete. So now we're good to go. We're here, we're at about 95 to 100 knots. Now we're approaching here our beam, our touchdown point. So here we are with our beam touchdown point. And here at the beam touchdown point, this is where we're going to be within our first notch flap speed. So again, we keep it under 100. With that first notch of flaps in here, press against that, don't let that balloon. Reduce power back to 15 inches here as well, holding 90 knots. 90 knots, we're going to start lowering that nose slightly and begin our descent. So here we are on the downwind. We're in the caution area here now. I'm looking here, my 45 degrees coming up here from my touchdown point. There's my 45 degrees. I can begin my turn here now from downwind to base. This is my turn here, downwind to base. Now I can put my second notch of flaps in. I'm good to go here. The Diamonds, the DA40s, they have 2 notches of flaps, so this is it. So here we are. We're coming down here on our base leg, heading here to final. Again, checking this, making sure everything is good, making sure that we are all set and ready to go around if necessary. Here we are now in the red zone. So now we're in the red zone. We are highly focused. Here we are in the red zone. Look at our turn. Nice turn here. Pick up the extended center line. Watch our speed here. Speed now is inside of 80 knots, 75 knots, 72 knots, 70 knots. Here's the fence, 67 over the fence. Runway is assured. I am safe to land. Power to idle. Carry what excess energy that we have. Center line, hold that. Touchdown, mains, nice and squeaky. Squeak, squeak. Okay, in this case, let's just do a touch and go. Okay, so here we are. Now we're going to clean it up. We're going to go to takeoff flaps. So 1 notch flaps comes up, still maintain center line, full power. You want to make sure that you give all of these motions, everything that you talk about doing, do with your hand where it's supposed to be. So here we are now, getting up here, 59, first notch. Here we go, coming up. 67 knots, everything is looking good, and you repeat this. So this is the type of thing, and again, depending upon your checklist, what you add, what you include, controlled, uncontrolled, you may want to practice both. I think it's a great idea to practice both. And you can look and you can say, okay, well, let's say that we have some things that we want to throw in there, and we want kids to practice this. So here we are, we're on takeoff, climbing out at 67 knots. We're probably at about 250 feet off the deck. Stealth mode. Engine quits. What do we do? So you'll have them practice right here what they do. I know that my bailout area is here, just slightly left of the runway, and you have them go through their forced landing checklist that they have that will be committed to memory. You have that, and then they have an uneventful landing in a field over here, or a road, or whatever it's going to be. Here's another one that's really kind of good here as well. You're in a towered airfield, you're on downwind. Here's another thing that you can throw at them. I'll stay inside this because I think I might be just off camera here. So inside this, so here you are, you're in the green zone. Everything is good. Everybody's just, happy. It's all awesome. It's a great day. Sun is shining. Birds are singing. You're a pilot. Life's good. And then you hear, November 123 Romeo Bravo. I've got traffic coming in on a straight-in 3-mile final here for runway 36. Can you give me a right 360 for spacing? Right 360 for spacing. So think about what they're asking the student to do here. So we're going to make a right turn here, again, provided that we can, that it's safe to do so. And what I want that student to be able to do is to be able to know that when we start doing this, they better set a 2-minute timer, because here, as we make this standard rate turn at 3 degrees per second, here as we come through here, I want them to take 2 minutes to make this turn out here around here on that right 360 for spacing. How about this one? Here we are, we're getting all set up, we're approaching here, we're all set, we're ready to go, and we have that confirmation bias that everything is going to be good. I'm ready to go, hear a beam, and I'm getting ready to configure my airplane here when we hear November 123 Romeo Bravo. I've got an airplane that's a 3.5 mile final here on 3.6. We need to get them in. I want you to extend your downwind, stay at traffic pattern altitude. I'll call your base leg. I want them to be able to respond appropriately here as they do that. So now, instead of configuring, now we need to think, okay, I'm going to be extending my downwind leg. Tower is going to call my base. So again, they're maintaining traffic pattern altitude here. They're maintaining their downwind leg. They're not cheating inside or outside. And they're managing their energy of their airplane, but then they're getting ready here to make something that may be a little non-standard to what they're used to. So those are some things that you can do to kind of throw into the mix here when you're teaching kids how to do some floor flying. This is the kind of thing where, we talk about the visualization of couch flying, etc. I prefer, whenever we can, to have movement. And now kids can do this. They can do this with tape. They can do it with chalk. They can be creative with how they do it. I do like to have the visual representation of the colors here, though, just for them to kind of understand how important these particular phases of flight actually are. So that's kind of why I like to do it like this. So, guys, there's one example of those. I got a million of these, but this is an example of some of the things that we can do when we're trying to teach a class remotely. We cannot get the kids there to lay hands on a sim as often as we'd like, but we want to keep them mentally engaged. This is a great way to do it. So anyway, hope this has been useful to you, and now back to the regular programming.
All right, guys, I think I'm back here now. So there we go. Wasn't that guy handsome? Anyway, so that's an example there of just one of the exercises that you can actually go through when you are thinking about what things that you can incorporate into this blended or hybrid type of learning environment. Again, I show this particular imagery here because with this you can see how a student could then sit in front of an image like this and go through an exercise that you may assign. So that's one of the things that we want to be able to do. Again, that power of visualization is just it's pretty powerful. So there's that with this. Now, that kind of goes through the things that I was wanting to go through with you here. So now we have time for any questions, any best practices, any comments, or anything that you might have on your minds. And so with that, I'm going to check in with Miss Joey here as well, and to see maybe what we got.
All right, Greg. We don't have any questions coming in right now. One person did have a hard time with the video, so if they email you, can you email that to them or maybe share it with them somehow?
Absolutely, we'll get that somewhere where we can share that.
Okay.
And Joey, you and I can kind of chat about the best way to do that. So again, if you had issues with looking at that video for any reason, let us know and we'll get a way for you to do that.
Yeah, okay, that sounds great. But nobody has any questions right now. We might give them a few minutes to submit something into the question box.
Okay, all right. And guys, also for those of you that may have or maybe not have yet received the information about migration, we're going to be doing it virtual this year. We're going to have a lot of exciting things happen here that we're going to be putting together for you. We're adjusting to everything just like everybody else is, but I think that we're going to have a pretty effective program here. We will have STEM related topics that we will be going through. We're in the process of kind of formulating those here as well. So if you have not seen that, I would strongly recommend that you check into that and join us for our virtual migration.
All right, well, we don't have any questions. Oh wait, here we go. Bruce asks, what age range do you usually encounter when using the floor flying technique?
So normally, Bruce, and again, great question. When I started doing this, I started with students in high school, and then as I got more and more comfortable with the younger ones starting with this, I took this exercise all the way down to 4th grade. Yeah, I know. So we had 4th graders that were in on these sims, and we actually used the floor flying here with our traffic pattern with 4th graders. So there you go.
All right. Well, that looks like it's it for us today. Oh yeah. Bruce says it'd be great to introduce airport operations to younger kids. So thanks, Bruce, for that. We
Couldn't
agree.
agree more.
All right. Well, we will sign off. Greg, if you want to give them your email or how to get
Absolutely.
in contact with you.
You bet, guys. And again, I'm going to make a note here that I actually put my doggone email address on one of these slides. I keep forgetting to do it. Roark, Groark at redbirdflight.com. And email me anytime. You can call the main number. They can get you in touch with me here as well for any STEM related questions like that you may have. And again, I appreciate you guys tuning in.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Take care, guys. See you.